Welcome to Lawyers Coach. Lawyers Coach is a series of podcasts that aims to find out what makes lawyers tick. Each episode features myself, Claire Rayson, and Oliver Hansard, both former lawyers and now coaches, interviewing a range of legal leaders to find out what success means and looks like in law. Lawyers Coach challenges lawyers to think differently and be inspired by their colleagues and peers. In this episode, Oliver Hansard will be talking to Susan Lamb. Susan is Group Records Manager at Shell. As well as being responsible for Shell's global compliance programme for records management, she is passionate about developing a culture of care in Shell Legal and ensuring that lawyers thrive. She talks to Oliver about wellbeing, resilience, and of course, why she became a lawyer.
I can't honestly remember when I first had the idea, but I was pretty young, I think. And I think it must have been some television program I saw or something. But I also had a very ambitious mother, and she said, you can either be a doctor, dentist, or a lawyer. I am really squeamish, and really discovered that really early on. So being in the medical profession wasn't going to fly. And then I did some school placement in a little solicitor's practice in Gloucester, actually, which is where I came from. I just really enjoyed it, and I could see that it would involve people and problem solving, and I knew those are the sorts of things I like doing. So I did my science A levels, and then decided I'm going to apply for law school. But I did have a little bit of a sort of setback. When I was 17, I had a car accident, and I just started my second year of A levels, and I broke my back. Basically, it was a pretty bad car accident, and I ended up being in hospital for a good 3 months. I didn't get the A level grades as I wanted. I had a place at Exeter to do law. I did have good grades to do the sciences, so I got a place through clearing to do chemistry and biology at London University.
While you were doing your undergraduate studies, you were always holding that idea that you would do the conversion and go into law in due course.
Yes, yeah, I was really focused. I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do because of this experience I'd had. And so I actually then took another turn, and I did a master's in food science and management for a year. And I did that because I thought, gosh, getting into law seems quite difficult. I didn't really appreciate that when I started out. It's quite difficult to do. So if I can't get into law, I'll give it one more go. I'll do food science as a career because that was my second choice, if you like. And but then I got in and I did the conversion course in London, and then did the finals, and did my articles at Norton Rose, as it was known then.
How did you find Norton Rose? How did you find doing your articles or training contracts, in the city?
Yeah, I love the variety. I really enjoyed, obviously, the intellectual property part of my my seats. I did a seat in litigation on working on intellectual property. But then I also really enjoyed my property seat, which was ultimately then where I qualified into.
And was that an easy choice, the property role?
There were two people going for one place in the intellectual property newly qualified jobs. And the other person got that, and I got my second choice, which was property. Okay. You know, it's funny because you look back in life at these things that happened to you that perhaps weren't your first choice things to do. So I qualified at the height of the property crash, really. I didn't have a lot of work to do during my first couple of years in property, I must admit. I got some good quality training, but it wasn't full on working long hours type thing at all. In fact, I do remember walking past some of the assistants' rooms, and they were reading books because they literally had no work to do.
But Norton Rose stuck with you. They stuck with the talent that they had.
They did, and actually, it really paid off. It paid off for them, but it also paid off for me, because when I was 4 years qualified, it was the height of the boom again.
There you go.
And there were very few of us around in the market, 4-year qualified property lawyers. So it paid off really in the end.
And was that when you moved on to Macfarlane's?
Yes, I went to Macfarlane's, and I wanted to work for a smaller, more not boutique, but definitely a smaller feel type firm.
And did you get that kind of smaller feel in the firm?
Yeah, definitely.
It delivered what you were hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really friendly firm. I mean, they're I don't know if they still have the phrase, they say punch bigger than their weight.
Right.
And they really high quality lawyers and high quality clients. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed my time there actually, and I was sad to leave, although I did want to do something different. I didn't want to stay in private practice forever.
And what was driving that?
I think I got fed up with just seeing part of the transaction. And it was, you just get the heads of terms, and to buy an investment property and then you didn't see any of the bit beforehand, and you didn't see any of it afterwards. I thought I was stuck, if I was honest, because there aren't many in-house property roles, and I didn't want to do a corporate. I didn't want to change into corporate work, although I was thinking
Right.
I might have to if I was going to get that experience. And then a colleague of mine had moved to Shell previously as a property lawyer, and she contacted me and said they're looking for someone else, so why don't you apply?
And those early days of being in-house, can you recall the contrast or the major differences that having been in private practice?
I was surprised because I found the quietness disorientating, and I felt that I was kind of on this busyness. Know what it's like. It's such a frantic existence in a law
Yeah.
firm, billing and clients and the next thing that's coming, and it was much more, well, definitely much more relaxed and a much more quieter, calmer approach to doing things. And whilst you might say, gosh, that would be great, actually I've really struggled with it to begin with. I almost found it, gosh, have I done the right thing here? Is this the right pace? What have I left behind?
Yeah.
But I adapted, and haven't looked back since then.
And so from there to where you are now in terms of group records manager, that's obviously a very different role. What was your journey within Shell?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not a very exciting job title, is it? Group records manager. And I do sort of think that when I tell people that's what I do at dinner parties and everything. But I mean, I love my role, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But yes, yeah. I did work for Shell UK business, dealing with property environmental matters, and then I went on maternity leave. I had twins actually. Whilst I was away, there was a bit of an event in Shell's corporate history relating to the miscategorization of their reserves. It was a huge event that changed the company completely. And there were lots of things needed to be done in terms of that challenge afterwards. And so what I was asked to do in that time was implement information management compliance as a kind of add-on to my property work,
Right.
but something that I could do to fit in my 3 days as well.
Okay.
So I started doing that for that role, and then long story short, we needed a permanent role doing that for the group, and the role of group records manager was established. And yeah, I applied for it and got it, and I really enjoy that role. This role, it's changed. I've been doing it now for, well, gosh, maybe 12, 13 years. And the information management compliance has become, just increasingly complex, increased regulation,
Higher profile.
really high
well
profile. Yeah.
So have you had to employ a whole range of skills that sort of non-legal behavioural skills in delivering that role effectively?
There's not a lot of pure black letter lawyering in my role. There's definitely some, but it's the influencing behaviors that I have had to learn. That's really about very much understanding, who you're talking to and their perspective. And I think that's a really important behavior for all lawyers as well. But in my role, it's not about giving advice in that context. It's more about explaining, the benefits and the downsides of doing something that the business want to do, and then working together to come up with a way forward that works for both them and for me.
So I imagine that the Shell legal team is quite large. Does that feel like it's your own law firm in a corporate, or does it really feel part of the business? What's the culture and the feel of the legal team at Shell?
Yeah, so it is quite large. We have about 1,200 staff across the group. So it is like a mini law firm. I personally don't feel like I'm in a mini law firm in the company. It doesn't have that feel at all for me. I mean, you might find a different answer from one of my colleagues. It's it feels that we're very integrated as part of the company, and we all have the same. We go through the same annual cycle of appraisals and goal setting. We have the same, as I talked about, leadership qualities that we're judged on. And we're judged not just on what we do in terms of our job and what we deliver, but also on how we do that. It's as important how you do things as what you do. And I really like that. And that's one of the things I was really looking for when I moved into a company like Shell, is because behaviors and how you treat people and how you get the results is so important.
And
Yeah,
that's a fantastic culture.
yeah, I mean, I really do think that. I mean, I'm quite evangelical about it. I do really enjoy my role, and but as I say, obviously, I'm only one person, but I also I work very closely with the business, as I say, across all my stakeholders. So that definitely helps me not feel that I'm sort of part of a law firm, and my boss isn't a lawyer either. So
Fascinating.
yeah.
Okay. And I know one of the things you're really passionate about is the care program in the Shell legal team. Tell me about that. Tell me how that came about in the first instance.
Yeah, so I mean, I've always thought that we need to look after ourselves, and I as I think you've heard, I have learnt resilience and to adapt and to do all those kind of things that keep you going. And resilience is a topic that as I say, I learned very early on when I had my car accident and everything. And I just I don't know, it just came to my attention that a lot of the press were talking about how lawyers in particular are the profession is prone to depression, anxiety, substance abuse and alcoholism and all those sorts of things. And I started sort of digging a bit deeper in my own department, my own function. And you know how things happen. And one week, I think I got 3 out of offices from colleagues who are basically off on long-term stress.
Wow.
And I talked to my line manager about this, and he said, "Yes, we're looking at this in the leadership team, where we want to, understand what's going on here." And then there was a report produced late last year or middle of last year that's talked about 1 in 5 junior lawyers who completed the survey 1 month before had suicidal thoughts. 1 in 5 who'd completed it. And then and I'd also done quite a lot of work in Shell. We're ably supported. We have a Shell Health, and they have a human performance and care department which supports business and functions to get the best out of their people in well-being. And so I did a few things. I reached out to them, and I was also doing a lot of work with my team on resilience, which is another topic that the Shell Health team had put some tools together to help with. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, it's not about big changes. It's little tweaks in mindset and health, way of lifestyle that we can all make, that make things better and make a difference for us. And when you dig deeper into the statistics around lawyers, they have particular character traits that lend themselves, unfortunately, to not very strong mental health states at times. We tend to be pessimistic. We're workaholism, if that's a word. and we tend to have a big feeling of imposter syndrome, not being good enough, the fear of being found out. And we can all make a difference to ourselves by actually giving us a break and being positive about what we achieve, and to each other, and watching out for each other. So that's what I started last year, was a program around really showing care in legal for our colleagues and for ourselves. And it really took off, actually. And I won the what was it, the legal leadership team's prize for ethics and compliance and safety last
fantastic.
year for my work in care. Yeah.
So it was obviously well received.
Mm.
What was it in practical terms? What did it feel like to receive that care?
Yeah, so it was really about just raising awareness of different things that people could do to look after themselves better. Obviously, I mean, I had all the benefit of all the resources from the human performance and care team in Shell Health. So it's about making legal aware of those resources. And we're divided into departments, and lots of the departments were doing good work on this as well, appointing things like care ambassadors, mental health ambassadors. And it was about just sort of sharing that around and some best practices. And then I also did a few of these podcasts to talk about different aspects of health and well-being. And we also do, with Shell Health again, we do a module called what is a caring leader, and sort of work with teams to really discuss, because care and well-being is actually it's a very personal thing. What is care to one person might not be care to another.
Yeah.
And teams have different dynamics, micro dynamics, if you like. So what we would do is if a team was wanting us to, we'd go into one of their meetings and we'd ask them, what's it like when you feel cared for?
Yeah.
And what's it like when you not feel cared for? And then kind of funnel those down to, well, what are the behaviors when you don't feel cared for, and what are the behaviors when you do feel cared for? And then coming out with maybe just 3 action points that the team can do. It may be as simple as, well, just checking in with each other a bit more, and or it may be having some sessions on sleep and wellness in the team meeting to educate people about good sleep routines and things. I mean, it could be whatever the team wanted it to be. I mean, the work-life balance thing is a big issue for everyone these days, I think, especially at the moment when most of us are working from home still, and where the balance fits is quite difficult. But just making it clear. I mean, perhaps as a line manager, you have a work-life balance, which means you do catch up with things on a Sunday morning. But then communicating to the team that just because you get an email from me on a Sunday morning doesn't mean you have to act on it. In fact, I don't want you to act on it. Only act on it if it fits in with your work-life balance.
So as you've been through your legal career, have you ever had in your mind a model of what success might look like, and therefore, played towards a particular goal in your career?
I had this feeling, when I was younger, that I used to say, I'm not going to sell my soul to become a partner in a city firm. That won't be success for me. Success is a really interesting, demanding job that keeps me learning and keeps challenging me, and yes, even putting me out of my comfort zone. But I can leave it at a decent o'clock in the day, and then do all the other things I want to do in my life. For me now, though, the well-being part of it is about giving back. So success for me is about really helping people as much as doing my day job as well. Does that sound a bit cheesy?
No, it's great. And I suppose the follow-on question from that is, any tips for somebody trying to work out what their model of success might be?
Always look at your values. What is really important to you in your life? Because there's a lot of positive psychology which says if you live by your values and your strengths and what are you good at, then that is where you'll find happiness. The other thing I would say is, that sort of career trajectory of law firm partnership is just one tiny line of career that you can do with law. You may be listening to this and thinking, oh, but I can only ever do law because that's what I'm trained to do, and I never do anything. You've got so many skills as a lawyer that you just don't realize you've got. So don't let that be the reason for not doing something different.
That was Oliver Hansard speaking to Susan Lamb, and Oliver joins me now. Oliver, I think what really struck me from that conversation was just how much Susan believes in giving back, and how much she's really working towards care and well-being. She kind of mentioned there an award that she won for her work in care. You can really see that the successes that she's had in that area mean so much to her.
I think that's right, and I think what she's been able to do is to blend that into her working life really effectively, and one has supported the other, which gives her a really enriching experience at Shell.
And one of the things that I picked up on was where she was talking about tweaks in mindsets, and the small things that can make things so much better for everyone. And I think sometimes well-being, resilience, these are things that can seem pretty big and unmanageable, but that kind of message of actually if we just make small changes, it can have a massive impact on everyone. I think is a really powerful one.
I think that's right, and that almost redefines success for her, such that yes, she's able to do great work as a lawyer in the organisation, but the fact now that she's been able to have all that positive impact on her colleagues, I think has really made the whole Shell experience for her far more enriching, and probably a form of success that she hadn't anticipated when she started out. And I just think that's a really great story.
And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting from your conversation with Susan was when she drew out some of the traits that lawyers have. So and interestingly, I can probably associate with all three, but being pessimistic, being a workaholic, having imposter syndrome. Is that something that you see when you're coaching lawyers, and how true do you think that is?
I think that's widespread. All those three characteristics are almost endemic in lawyers, and that's maybe part of what the driver of success for many people is. But what I took from Susan is, if you become aware of those, if you're honest about those, you can manage them effectively, and that actually makes you a healthier person and a better lawyer. Fair play to her, and for her giving her colleagues in the business support on those issues. I just think that's really admirable.
And I think imposter syndrome for me is the most interesting one, because I think it's one of those things that I think is being talked about more widely now, because I guess one of the things with imposter syndrome is you don't want to shout about it. So it's interesting, following on social media or talking to people, that there's a real recognition of this as something that exists and something that people struggle with. And I think it's something that we can all relate to. I've certainly had moments in my career where I've thought that I shouldn't be there, and I'd be found out. And with all these things, as you say, I think it's raising awareness of them helps recognize, okay, well, maybe it's just me falling into this trap and not getting sucked into it, rather than holding back because you think that maybe you're not good enough.
Maybe the starting point should be that there should be an expectation that imposter syndrome is the norm and you're unusual if you don't have it. And if that can, as I say, be a starting point, then maybe that's going to give more people more confidence, particularly earlier on in their careers.
Thanks, Ollie. That's certainly left me with lots to think about. And thank you for interviewing Susan and for raising awareness of some of these issues that I think we need to be talking about more as a profession. And thank you for listening to this episode of Lawyers Coach.
Lawyers Coach is brought to you by Client Talk and Hansard Coaching. If you're enjoying this series, please rate us on your podcast provider so that others can find us. If you're a lawyer and would like to take part in Lawyers Coach, please visit our website lawyercoach.co.uk for further details. And you can also join the conversation on our LinkedIn group Lawyers Coach. If there are any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, then just get in touch.